Now next, we are moving to the next session, which is on training and UAV airworthiness. So starting off, first of all, we have our next speaker, Mr. Shinto Joseph, who is a Director Southeast Asia Operations at LDRA Technology, a distinguished alumnus award winner from Price Institute of Management. He has over 22 years of experience in handling embedded software cycle solutions. He has worked with cross-border teams, various other technology, and he'll be speaking on building indigenous skills for Make in India. So I'll just request Mr. Joseph to kindly begin this presentation.
Thanks to Dushit for inviting me. In fact, I was part of the webinar organizing committee. When this topic came, I said I would like to handle that purely because of my passion towards this area. If you look at last 2-3 months, I've been doing a lot of sessions on skills on multiple fronts, on academia, industry, on various. Yes. I'll just share my thoughts. Dushit, can you make me the presenter?
Yes, sure, sir.
Sure. Can you see the slide?
We can see the slides, yes.
Great. So I have a request, all of you to please mute. That is probably one of the best indigenous skills we could make it happen or make in India. So just look at, the Make in India objectives. Skills plays a major role as part of the Make in India objectives. There are other areas also. So some of you would have read an article, an interview which I did with the Yearly Times, August edition. You can find it in LinkedIn, where I said, the missing link in indigenization. So I am going to touch base that aspect also. What is that missing link in indigenization, especially on the skills front? So I'm going further. Let's take a drone ecosystem. A typical drone ecosystem involves designers, manufacturers, testers, approvers, regulators, standard bodies, and we also have the backend cloud, data processing centers. It doesn't stop there. You have artificial intelligence, a whole lot of things comes into the picture. So drone in isolation or skill around just drone doesn't work. So we need a holistic perspective to understand this game slightly better. You go further. And I said, if you really want this industry to come up, we need the ecosystem to come. Let's look at the stakeholders of a product development ecosystem, starting with the government ministries to standard bodies. That is where actually BAS comes into picture. BAS also collaborate with international standard bodies, outside ISO, FAA, EASA, a whole lot of other organizations, regulators. That's where DGCA comes into picture. We do have certification bodies like, TUV, UL, those kind of things, professional bodies, aerospace, professional like Aeronautical Society, technology vendors like LDRA, manufacturers, where you have the drone manufacturers comes into picture, service providers, whole lot of universities who provide the skills. Let's look at when each of these stakeholders does their job properly, you can see an ecosystem evolving in our country. Any one of them fails, actually you are failing the manufacturers. We normally blame academia, we blame the manufacturers for not making India products. But we don't understand each one of these stakeholders has got a larger role to play. For me, this is my third decade in dealing with each of these agencies. I started with aerospace and defense industries, nuclear industries, space industries, and going forward, wherein today I spend a lot of my time with the semicon, automotive, UAVs, medical devices, everywhere. This is the whole lot of thing comes into picture. So when I say skill building, it is all skill building for everybody. Any one of the stakeholders missing the link, we are losing out in the game. And my dream is basically, I want to have made in India products designed by Indians. I'm okay, and a multinational selling a product in India, I'm not against it. But I'm keen in making sure that, the manufacturers in India are becoming successful, not only selling in India, elsewhere also. That is where actually, if you look at, I have a classic example. 8 years back, I gave a presentation in one of the industry bodies meeting, in Ahmedabad. They said, Shinto, you are unnecessarily bringing up these issues of standardization, certification, regulation, blah, blah, blah. You don't spoil our industry. I said, I want. If you don't do that, you probably will be losing out to outside players, this market also. So eventually same thing happened. 9 years down the line, today, the particular industry, I'm talking about medical device industry, we are lost completely to Chinese medtech manufacturers. We also have the success, failure story of civil aviation, where we didn't do the right thing at the right time. So now we have a time to act on a UAV, which is a novel industry, where we are probably, it's happening right now. We can take an action, we can save the industry in the right direction. So it's a question of chicken or egg. One side, the standard bodies say we need to set the standards. Industry normally will say we don't need the standards. But when we don't do it in an appropriate way, I really use the word appropriate way, overnight bringing too much of stringent standards could kill an industry. It is not the right thing. We need to go in a step-by-step, gradual way so that, we build skills and expertise within our country. That's what I mean by indigenous skills. Depending on foreigners, sorry, we cannot make in India happen in our country. That skills, let it be designer, let it be manufacturing, let it be testing, certification, all those skills has to be made available in our country. Then it will happen. So skills are important, but not just academic qualification. This is where again we make a mistake. We have thousands of engineers in our country, but to be frank, only 2% of these engineers today, the study says, productive for product development jobs. UAV comes into that category, the product development, right? So what we need is actually full stack engineer. Means we need to change our education system in such a way that I work with a lot of government bodies as well as universities in telling them that what we need is the need of the hour is a full stack engineer, not just engineer. So we probably need to look at interdisciplinary studies, syllabuses need to change, curriculum needs to change. So a whole lot of changes has to happen in our education system. Thanks to the recent education policy change, it is the first step in that direction. We need to do more in that direction. So skills at all levels, skills at academia, skills at policy making is very important. Having policy level skill set is very important because last couple of years you can hear in India policy discussions very loudly people are talking. This is probably one of the forums where people bring in policy matters also. So I was talking to an Australian professor about that. He said, Shinto, I got a course in cybersecurity. I'm talking about 2.5 years back. And he also said, Shinto, I do have a master's program on cybersecurity policy making. I was shocked to hear. So that's where the world is going. We need to give a little more attention to the policy making, bringing a little more in the right players into the game. Regulatory framework, there also we need to get the right expertise as the regulatory framework within our country. Certification, again, product certification capabilities has to be built as par with international standards. Not saying that, I got my standard, let the world listen to me. That's not going to happen. We have international standards. We need to build those capabilities within our country, involving all the stakeholders. That's the key thing. Leaving one sector alone, one stakeholder alone, it doesn't work. So probably we need to bring in that holistic picture so that people understand this. Government has made the right step in this direction with the sector skills councils. But again, here also, I believe we need to go further, bringing in that holistic picture about, from end to end, can we build full stack engineers? Then, especially on, Professor from ISC spoke about, safety, security, risk assessment. Unfortunately, in our product development ecosystem, I've been into this gamut for years, starting from risk assessment, how do we start a product development? And more than 50% of the time with the product manufacturers in India whom I have interacted, I asked them, have you done a risk assessment? Have you done a life cycle costing? Have you done a reliability prediction before even the product design started? They said, why do we need to do that? We just started. So eventually what happens is we miss the opportunity of getting this product certified for international markets. Eventually what happens is we try to sell only to the local market. At some point of time, we probably lose out to foreign players. Now foreign players, what they do in India? No comments? You hear gas leaks, accidents, road accidents, all these things. Foreign brands are sold in India again with the downgraded safety, security, liability standards. So it's our responsibility to collectively work together, come into the standard body, regulatory organizations, work together to build the capabilities in our country because every Indian's life matters. And my prediction is the overall regulatory and ecosystem gamut of UAVs will be going to be more complex than the civil aviation space. Given the category of the drones and the activities, that's going to be the future. So we need to work beyond the current level of thinking, get a holistic picture, fill the gaps. Sector skill councils could be, further strengthened to make sure that, we build products which can be sold elsewhere also, not just in India. And to make in India happen, today the need of the hour is basically we do look at horizontal, we look at local. While we look at global markets, we have a lot of capabilities available in our country. COVID has taught us a great lesson that okay, we can be part of the global supply chain. We can source some modules from elsewhere. I'm okay with that. But then the priority should be making these things locally available with a slightly long-term vision. What is missing in our Indian context is, as a person who has walked through the corridors of almost all the sectors, you name, what is missing in our context is, when I compare it with the multinational companies from other countries, because almost all of them are my customers, you name, all of them are. What they do is they think slightly on a long-term basis, we think probably from a very shorter perspective. The technology industry also, we lost out because we were catching the low-hanging fruits, especially in the service industry. So we need to encourage our product designers, manufacturers. I'm pretty happy that, there are a lot of drone manufacturing companies, especially startups, coming up in India. We need to encourage them, make sure that they are mentored properly, guided them properly, so that, they fit into the global supply chain, not only for selling to India. So again, this is where actually organizations like LDRA comes into the picture. We do a lot of activities on ecosystem development, mentoring startups, university programs, consulting, training. So that's what I do. I would try to take some questions for the next 2 minutes.